Soccer star Megan Rapinoe and hundreds of athletes are calling on the NCAA to allow transgender athletes now to compete against women in college sports. Joining me now is Macy Petty, a college volleyball player. So, Macy, I got to emphasize something. Megan Rapinoe has just resigned. She's retired, essentially, from being a soccer star. It's very convenient, her timing on this, isn't it? She gets out of soccer just as she's saying that that biological men can get in.
That's exactly right. She's not going to have to bear the burden of these harmful policies. She's expecting younger female athletes like myself to have to face the consequences. So far, the NCAA has been answering to a very small minority of woke activists like Megan Rapinoe. But now you were just talking about Caitlin Clark. The eyes are on women's athletics, and they're going to have to answer to the American public, which is not willing to sacrifice female opportunity and female sports to this woke agenda.
So even though Megan Rapinoe has retired from the great game known as football, yes, it's football, not soccer, best sport in the world, by the way, nobody will tell me anything different. She still manages to make the headlines, doesn't she? And for a woman who apparently stands for equality and fairness within women's sports, women's football, you know, her whole shtick was equal pay within football, which never made sense to begin with. But for a woman who, again, apparently stands for equality and fairness within women's sports, women's football, you would think she would be against men, who she constantly complains about being in women's sports and competing against women, right? Taking away places, awards, etc., etc. Well, no, she's all for men competing against women. Doesn't really make sense, does it? And this isn't a recent stance either. For example, back in July 2023, the National Review reported, Megan Rapinoe backs male athletes competing against women, slams transphobic critics. Alright then, when Megan Rapinoe, a former co-captain of America's national women's soccer team, was asked whether she would welcome a transgender woman on the US women's soccer team, even if that woman, you mean a guy, took the place of someone assigned female at birth, Rapinoe was unflinching and said, absolutely. You're taking a real woman's place. That's the part of the argument that's still extremely transphobic. I see trans women as real women. What you're saying automatically in the argument, you're sort of telling on yourself already, is you don't believe these people are women, therefore they're taking the other spot. I don't feel that way. I don't think it really matters how you feel, if I'm going to be honest, but all the girls that spent their time looking up to Megan Rapinoe has essentially been sold a lie, because she doesn't care about women's sports. You know, all she cared about, really, let's be honest about it, was the money and more money. She doesn't care about equality and fairness, because if she did, she would be against men competing against women. And to further solidify that stance and really show people what she stands for, she has now joined a group advocating for men to compete against women. Outkick report, Megan Rapinoe joins group advocating for men to play sports against women. This comes as the NCAA Board of Governors is expected to meet on Thursday to discuss and potentially vote on the issue involving transgender women, more commonly referred to as biological men, competing in women's college sports. As a result, a number of current and former athletes who lack common sense or a basic understanding of biology have come together to release letters urging the NCAA not to ban trans women from competing against biological women at the collegiate level. Megan Rapinoe, along with her fiance and former WNBA star Sue Bird, headlined the group that includes more than 400 current and former professional and collegiate athletes, 300 academics, and around 100 separate advocacy organizations. So pretty much a large group of woke liberal athletes. You've got academics who have been brainwashed and they want to brainwash everybody else, and then you have the advocacy groups who want to, I guess, try and control the narrative as much as they can. But you know, with these woke athletes, for example, they would complain every single day about how male sports is treated differently to female sports, like Megan Rapinoe did. Yet as soon as a male goes into a female sport and destroys the competition, takes places, awards away, they say nothing. It's odd. That just shows you how backwards all of this is. It's virtue signaling. Each person who sees nothing wrong with biological men competing against women released separate letters on Tuesday that were coordinated by the LGBTQ sports advocacy group Athlete Ally. According to the former US women's star and the hundreds of others on Rapinoe's side, keeping women's sports exclusive to biological women would place the NCAA on the wrong side of history. We call on you to be on the right side of history and affirm that sport is truly for us all, the letter signed by the athletes and academics said. Do not ban transgender women from NCAA women's women's sports. Yeah, I tell you now, nobody in years to come is going to be saying, you know what, Megan Rapinoe and all these woke activists were on the right side of history. Look how correct they were. No, we're all going to be looking back and saying, wow, this caused so much damage. And you know what? I want everybody who advocated for this, advocated for men competing in women's sports, I want all of them to take accountability when that comes around. When we all look back at the consequences, I want them to say, sorry, you know what? We were wrong. It's not going to happen. They never will. They never take accountability. When the consequences come around and they're made clear, it's radio silence. You know what? Some of them even act like they never stood for it in the first place. Rapinoe issued a statement of her own which completely misrepresents the actual conversation being had. The time is now for the NCAA and the nationwide athletic community to speak up and affirm that sports should be for everyone, including transgender athletes, Rapinoe said in the statement, which was released by the Athlete Ally. The debate around transgender athletes is not about whether or not they should have the right to compete, but whether they should have the right to compete against biological women. Rapinoe and others constantly lump the two very separate conversations into one to mislead members of the public who haven't been paying close enough attention. And it's all intentionally done, in my opinion, especially with the mainstream media. You know, when a policy is put in place or even spoken about, you'll see the headlines and they'll be like, trans women are being banned from sports, trans athletes are being banned from sports, which isn't the case. And those headlines are put out there to get sympathy and empathy, and they're put out there to make people angry, very outraged, which, you know, always happens with the woke leftists, woke liberals, and they'll sit there and they'll think, wait, hold on, trans athletes are being banned from sports. Oh no, we can't have this. This is wrong. It's disgraceful. And the average person who, again, isn't paying close enough attention to this topic, they might feel the same as well. But in reality, you know, they're not being banned, are they? They're just being required to compete in the right category, plain and simple. But Riley Gaines has blasted Megan Rapinoe for taking this stance. She posts on X, Megan Rapinoe, in typical virtue signaling fashion, is pulling up the ladder behind her. No one would even know who Megan Rapinoe is if it wasn't for women's sports, lol. Even Piers Morgan has responded to Megan Rapinoe's stance, saying, shameful to see women actively endorse unfairness and equality versus women. And he's right, and so is Riley Gaines. But that point he makes, shameful to see women actively endorse unfairness and equality versus women. When you sit here and think about it, a large group of people who are okay with trans athletes going into women's sports are these woke liberal feminists, because they see men identifying as women as real women. So by default, they think they should get the same rights and privileges as real women. They're okay with men going into women's sports, going into their locker rooms, change rooms, because they see them as women, and you're not allowed to disagree with that, which is kind of crazy to think about as well, because these very same woke liberal women are the same ones who sit there and complain every single day about men and the patriarchy, but they're okay with the dude going into women's sports and destroying the competition, taking those places, awards away from other women, from other girls. It's insanity, it's backwards, it's ridiculous, and the fact we have athletes here, athletes, who want to keep men in women's sports, how do you even explain that? You can't make it up. Make it make sense. And you know what? People like Megan Rapinoe aren't going to have to deal with the consequences. But the girls who are impacted by this, they will have to. So clearly she doesn't care about those girls, right? Again, she doesn't care about women's sports. I hope the NCAA make the right call here and don't feel pressured by Megan Rapinoe and others to keep their policies the same, because the girls who are competing with the NCAA, etc., they deserve better. Hopefully they've learned from the Riley Gaines, Leah Thomas situation. You can't have those situations continuing to happen. Leave your thoughts down below, ladies and gentlemen, on this story. What are your thoughts on it all? I would like to know. If you have enjoyed, make sure to leave a like rating. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, turn on bell notifications so you never miss a video, comment on this video, share this video. But until next time, it has been your boy JD. Have a great day, stay safe, and I'm out.